I sat in my car outside Grandma Opal's house in Old Fourth Ward for 6 minutes before walking in. Not because I was nervous, because I needed to decide how much longer I was going to let my family believe the man they pitied was the man I actually was. 14 years is a long time to be invisible on purpose. Thanksgiving night, I decided it was long enough. Welcome to the story. Get settled, because this one is going to take you somewhere you don't expect. Drop a comment, and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to want to be here for this. Now, let's get into it. The Camry was cold. November in Atlanta doesn't hit you the way winter does up north. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles in low and damp, gets into your coat, sits in your knees. I had the engine off, and the window cracked about an inch because I like the way Grandma Opal's street sounds at night. Kids down the block. Somebody's television bleeding through a screen door. A dog barking at absolutely nothing the way dogs in Old Fourth Ward have been doing since before the neighborhood got a coffee shop with oat milk on the menu. I could see the house from where I was parked. Same house. Same uneven porch steps that Grandpa Holloway swore he was going to fix every summer from 1978 until the Lord called him home in 2003. He never fixed them. Nobody else did either. That felt right somehow. The lights were on in every window. Grandma Opal doesn't believe in dark rooms during holidays. She says empty light is just a room that's given up on company. So every lamp goes on. Every overhead. The porch light that flickers because the wiring hasn't been updated since Reagan was in office. That house glows on Thanksgiving like it's trying to signal aircraft. I grabbed the bottle of wine off the passenger seat. Good wine. Not the kind you panic buy at the gas station on the way over. I'd picked this one out 3 days ago from a shop on the west side where the owner knows me by name and doesn't ask questions about why I always pay cash. Small habits. Quiet habits. The kind of habits you build when you've spent 14 years making sure nobody in your family knows who you actually are. I got out of the car, took a breath. The air smelled like wood smoke and somebody's deep fryer, and something sweet coming from inside that house that I knew without checking was Grandma Opal's sweet potato pie. That smell hasn't changed since I was 9 years old. Some things in this world stay exactly where you left them. Grandma Opal's kitchen is one of them. I walked up those uneven porch steps, opened the screen door, and stepped inside. The house hit me all at once the way it always does. Warm air. Motown coming from the kitchen radio that's been sitting on the same counter since 1991. Voices layered over each other like a choir that never learned the same song. The particular comfortable chaos of a family that's been doing this long enough to stop pretending they like each other more than they actually do. Which, honestly, is its own kind of love. Grandma Opal found me before I found her. She always does. Came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, moved through the living room like a woman who has never once been in a hurry, but always arrives exactly on time. She grabbed both of my hands. Not a hug. Not yet. Just my hands. Held them and looked at my face the way she's looked at my face since I was a boy. Like she's reading a letter that only she knows how to translate. You look tired, baby. Grandma, I weigh the same I've weighed for 15 years. I said tired, not thin. I know the difference. She squeezed my hands once, firm, then let go. But her eyes stayed on mine a half-second longer than they needed to, and something passed through them that I had seen before but never named. Not worry exactly. Something closer to knowing. Like she was looking at a door she'd been standing outside of for a very long time and could hear exactly what was on the other side. She pressed a plate of something into my hands before I could argue. Candied yams. Still warm. That's Grandma Opal. The conversation is a courtesy. The food is the real language. I made my way into the living room, and that's when I heard him. Before I saw him. That laugh. Terrence Holloway has a laugh that doesn't enter a room so much as it colonizes one. Big. Bright. Calibrated whether he knows it or not, to make absolutely certain every person in the vicinity knows he has arrived and is having a better time than you. He was standing by the mantel. Brenda beside him in a cream-colored blouse smiling at something he'd just said. My cousin Ray across from them nodding with the particular enthusiasm of a man who figured out in 1992 that laughing at Terence Holloway's jokes was a full-time career and never looked back. Terence spotted me across the room. That grin. Wide and easy, and full of teeth. The kind of grin that makes people think warmth when what they're actually looking at is territory. Warren. He said my name. The way you'd say the name of a dog that just wandered into the yard. Fond, but not quite serious. He crossed the room and grabbed my shoulder. One of those grips that's supposed to feel like brotherhood but always lands like a man measuring something. Wasn't sure you were coming. Figured you might be at home doing. He waved his hand vaguely in the air, whatever it is you do. Consulting, right? He said the word consulting the way you'd say magic tricks. Like something a child claims to be good at. Something like that, I said. Still in that Camry? He glanced toward the window like he could see the parking situation from here. Brother, that car is old enough to vote. Cousin Ray laughed. Brenda smiled into her drink, the way she always does when Terence says something she knows she shouldn't encourage, but doesn't have the energy to redirect. Car runs fine, I said. Flat, even. The way you say things when you've decided a long time ago that defending yourself to people who aren't listening is a waste of perfectly good oxygen. Terence clapped my back and moved on to the next thing because Terence always moves on to the next thing. That's his gift. Never sits in a moment long enough to notice who he just cut. I sat in moments. That was mine. The evening moved the way these things always do in Grandma Opal's house. Food kept appearing. Drinks kept being refilled by hands that didn't ask first. Grandma Opal held the room the way she's held every room since Grandpa passed. Laughing big, pulling quiet people into louder conversations, making sure nobody sat alone too long with their plate. I watched Brenda when Terence wasn't looking. She checked her phone 3 times in 20 minutes. Smiled when she caught me watching. But the smile didn't go all the way up. Something behind it, something tired. I noticed. I noticed things. That's what you learn to do when nobody's watching you. You watch everyone else. I was actually having a good time. Grandma's mac and cheese was perfect. The house was warm. For a few hours, I almost forgot what was coming. I should have left before the toast. Grandma Opal called everyone to the table at 7:15. She didn't raise her voice. Never has to. She just stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room, wiped her hands on that same towel, and said tables ready in a voice that somehow carried through 2 rooms, 4 conversations, and Terence's laugh without breaking a sweat. The woman could whisper in a hurricane, and the hurricane would sit down and listen. The dining room table was the same one that's been in that house since before I was born. Oak. Heavy. Scratched in ways that tell stories nobody needs to explain because we were all there when they happened. Grandma had it set with the good plates. The ones that only come out for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and funerals. She doesn't see a difference between those 3 occasions. We took our seats. 18 of us packed around a table built for 12 because Grandma Opal has never in her life acknowledged the concept of maximum capacity. She stood at the head, reached out both hands. Everyone linked up, fingers to fingers, the chain going all the way around. The room got quiet. Not the forced kind. The kind that settles naturally when someone you love is about to talk to God on your behalf. Lord. Her voice started strong, dropped softer as she went. We thank you for this table, for the hands that prepared it and the hearts that showed up to sit at it. We thank you for another year of breath, another year of each other. Some tables got empty chairs this year that were full last year. Ours didn't, and we don't take that lightly. Her voice caught slightly. The kind of crack that happens when a woman means something so completely her body can't quite hold it all. Bless this food. Bless this family. And Lord, give us the grace to be gentle with each other. Amen. Amen. It came from everywhere at once. I meant it. Every letter. For the next hour, that table was everything good. Food passed in every direction. Mac and cheese, cornbread, collard greens, ham, the sweet potato pie sitting on the counter, radiating patience. because it knew its moment was coming. Cousin Ray told a story about his neighbor's dog that went on 14 minutes too long, but nobody stopped him because that's what family does. My phone buzzed in my pocket around 7:45. I pulled it out under the table. Simone. Miss you tonight, Zoe says, save her a plate. Micah wants to know if Grandma made the pie with marshmallows or without. He says without is a deal breaker. I smiled. Typed back quickly. With marshmallows, tell Micah his standards are respected. Tell Zoe I already set a plate aside. Tell you I'll be home before 10. 3 dots. Then a heart. Just a heart. That woman has never needed more than one character to say everything. I slid the phone back. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever does. That's the thing about being invisible. You can carry a whole life in your pocket, and the people 3 feet away will never feel its weight. I looked up and caught Brenda staring at her own phone under the table. Different energy. Not smiling. Jaw tight. She caught me looking and put it away fast. Smiled, but the smile had a door behind it, and the door was closed. I filed it. I file everything. Around 8:30, Grandma Opal stood again. Raised her glass of sweet tea because she has never had a sip of alcohol in her life, and considers it a personal point of pride. I look around this table, and I see my whole heart sitting in chairs. I don't need anything fancy. I just need you all here. That's enough. That's always been enough. She sat down. The room hummed with something real. I felt it in my chest. And then Terrence cleared his throat. I just want to add something real quick. Here we go. He stood up. Slow, deliberate. Glass of bourbon raised just high enough. The comfortable confidence of a man who has never once questioned whether the room wanted to hear from him. Been a great year. He nodded, looking around. Making eye contact with everyone the way a man does when he wants witnesses. Brenda and I are settled in Buckhead. Dealership is doing numbers. Life is good. He grinned wide. Some of us are really out here making it happen. He turned. Looked directly at me. Direct. Deliberate. Making sure every pair of eyes followed his. And then some of us. That grin spreading wider. The kind that makes people think he's joking when he is absolutely not. Some of us are 53 years old. No wife, no kids, no one to call. Still driving that Camry. Still doing, he waved his hand, consulting. Air quotes. He actually did air quotes. Must be tough, big brother. But hey. He raised his glass in my direction like a toast. Like I was the punchline he'd been building toward all night. At least Grandma's mac and cheese makes everything better, right? Cousin Ray laughed. Once. Stopped when nobody followed. Brenda looked at her glass like she wanted to crawl inside it. And Grandma Opal did not laugh. Her eyes went straight to me. Sharp and steady, and carrying something heavier than worry. I had seen that look once before. The night she told me without words across her kitchen table that she knew about Simone. She knew the whole time, and loved me enough to let me keep my secret until I was ready. She was giving me that same look now. And underneath it, quiet as a hymn, was something that felt like permission. The room went silent, not the good kind. The kind that falls when something has cut too deep, and everyone can feel the blood. But nobody wants to look down. I set my glass on the table. Slowly. The way you set something down when you want your hands free and your mind clear. Don't worry about me, Terrence. Even, calm, almost bored. I'm doing just fine. He laughed, raised his glass like he'd landed the joke of the year. I let him have it. I wasn't going to fight him in Grandma Opal's dining room. This table was sacred. Some things you don't bleed on. I turned to Grandma. Smiled. Real and warm. That pie is the best you've ever done, Grandma. She reached across the corner of the table and squeezed my hand once. Firm. Thank you, baby. The evening moved on. Dishes got cleared. Terrence went back to holding court. I helped Grandma with the dishes. We stood side by side at that kitchen sink, the same one we'd stood at 1,000 times, and neither of us said a word about what happened at the table. We didn't need to. Something passed between us that 14 years of silence had been building toward. A look. A nod so small you'd miss it if you weren't built to notice the things most people don't. I was built to notice. I drove home through Atlanta with the windows down. Late November, air coming through cold and clean, cutting across my face the way I needed it to. Peachtree Street lit up on both sides, the city moving the way cities move at night. Unhurried, unconcerned with whatever just happened in a dining room in Old Fourth Ward. Something had unlocked inside me, clean and quiet, like a key turning in a lock that had been waiting 14 years for exactly the right pressure. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud. Anger makes mistakes. What I felt was quieter than anger. More patient. The kind of feeling that has been sitting in a chair in the back of your mind for a very long time and has just decided to stand up. I pulled into the driveway a little after 9:30. The porch light was on. Simone always leaves the porch light on when I'm out. Not because she's worried, because she says a man should never come home to a dark house. I sat in the Camry for a moment. Same car Terrence had made jokes about 3 hours ago. Same car I've been driving for 11 years by choice. Not because I can't afford something else. Because the car runs fine, and I've never been a man who needed metal and glass to tell people who I am. I went inside. Simone was on the couch, reading glasses on, case files spread around her like a paper fortress. She looked up when I walked in. Those eyes, 14 years, and those eyes still do something to my chest that I have never been able to name and have stopped trying to. How was it? Terrence was Terrence. She took her glasses off, set them on the file in her lap, looked at me the way she looks at me when she already knows the answer but wants to hear me say it. What did he say this time? The usual. 53. Nothing to show. No one to call. I hung my jacket on the hook by the door. He did air quotes around consulting. Simone was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that only Simone would say. I hope you at least brought me back some of Grandma Opal's pie. I held up the plate I'd wrapped before leaving. She smiled. Lord, I love this woman. Upstairs, Zoe was already asleep. 12 years old, and she'd been practicing Dvorak's cello concerto for 3 straight weeks with the kind of intensity that concerned me as a father and impressed me as a human being. Micah's light was still on. I cracked his door. He was sitting on the floor surrounded by star charts, his telescope pointed at the window, waiting for the clouds to clear. Dad. Jupiter's supposed to be visible tonight, but the cloud cover is at 68%. How do you know the exact percentage? I have an app. He's 8. I closed his door and stood in the hallway of my house. The house nobody in my family knew about. The wife they'd never met. The children they'd never held. The life I'd built brick by brick, quiet as a cathedral, while they were busy deciding I was nobody. Terrence had no idea. Not about Simone. Not about Zoe's cello filling the living room on Sunday mornings like something holy. Not about Micah calculating cloud cover percentages at 8 years old. Not about the building with my name on it, sitting 9 miles from Grandma Opal's kitchen table. Not about any of it. And I had spent 14 years making absolutely sure of that. They say pride is the most expensive thing a man can own. My brother Terrence had been running up that bill for decades. The Monday after Thanksgiving was the day it finally came due. If you've been listening for a while, do me one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. Hit that like button while you're at it and drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's keep going. Monday morning. Atlanta was doing what Atlanta does in late November. Cool but not cold. Sky sitting low and gray over Midtown like it couldn't decide whether to commit to rain or just threaten it all day. I was at my desk by 7:15. Coffee from the place on the ground floor of Pont City Market, where Marcus has been handing me the same large dark roast every weekday morning for 9 years. He had it waiting when I walked in, because that's what 9 years gets you. A cup that's ready before you are, and a man who nods instead of talks at that hour. I respect that. The office was quiet at that hour. Just the way I like it. Holloway Capital sits in the middle of Midtown Atlanta. 10 floors. South-facing. The kind of view that makes people stop mid-sentence the first time they see it. I've watched it happen more times than I can count. Someone walks in ready to negotiate, and then the skyline hits them through the floor-to-ceiling glass, and they just go still. Investing is 70% psychology. The other 30 is knowing which 30% matters. We fund small businesses, specifically businesses built by people who look like me in communities that look like the one I grew up in. That's not charity. That's strategy. The smartest money I've ever placed has been on people that other investors wouldn't return a phone call to. 13 years of returns have proven me right. Quietly. The way I prefer. I had 4 calls scheduled for the morning. A portfolio review at 11. And somewhere in the back of my mind, quiet and unhurried, Terrence's voice. Must be tough. I let it sit there. Didn't push it away. Didn't dwell on it. Just let it be what it was. My phone rang at 10:14. I looked at the screen. Terrence. I set my coffee down. Let it ring twice. Not because I was being dramatic. I genuinely needed those 2 seconds to decide which version of myself was going to answer. The brother. The businessman. The man who had been quietly holding Terrence Holloway's life together since 2011 without him ever knowing it. I answered on the 3rd ring. Terrence. Warren. His voice was different. I noticed it before he finished saying my name. Terrence Holloway has a voice that's always slightly too large for whatever space it's in. Loud on the phone. Louder in person. Takes up bandwidth even through a speaker. This wasn't that voice. This was a voice that had been stripped down to the studs. You got a minute? He needed more than a minute. I've got a few. I leaned back in my chair. Waited. He took a breath. I could hear him moving around. Pacing. Terrence has paced when he's uncomfortable since he was 6 years old and broke Grandma Opal's lamp and spent 20 minutes walking circles in the hallway before confessing. Some habits don't grow up just because the man wearing them does. So look, I'm just going to say it straight. A pause. The kind of pause that costs a man like Terrence everything because pausing means he's not in control of the conversation, and Terrence Holloway has to be in control of every conversation he's ever been in. The dealership cut my contract. Thursday. No warning, no meeting, just done. Called me on the phone like I was a vendor they were canceling. I didn't say anything. I've got lease payments on the lot. I've got 2 guys still on payroll. I've got the Buckhead mortgage, which... Another breath. Heavier. Brenda left. Moved out last Tuesday. Took her things while I was at the lot. I thought about Brenda at that Thanksgiving table. Checking her phone. Jaw tight. The smile with the closed door behind it. I'd filed it. Now the file made sense. It's bad, Warren. I'm working on it, but it's... He couldn't finish. Started again. Couldn't finish that one either. Like a car turning over in cold weather, catching for a second then dying. How much? He told me the number. I didn't flinch. Outside anyway. Inside, I was thinking about Thanksgiving. About the way he'd turned and looked directly at me in front of the whole family. About Grandma Opal's eyes cutting across the table. About air quotes around the word consulting. Terrence. Yeah. Come to my office. Monday. 8 a.m. A beat of silence. The particular silence of a man whose mental filing system has just encountered a document it doesn't have a folder for. Your office? I'll text you the address. Okay. A pause. Then quieter. Genuinely quieter. The voice of a man standing in the rubble of everything he'd built his identity on top of. Warren. I appreciate it, man. I mean that. I looked out at the midtown skyline. Late morning light cutting between the buildings, in long, clean angles. 8 a.m., Terrence. Don't be late. He was late. 8:22 when Natasha called up to tell me my brother was in the lobby. Of course he was. Terrence Holloway has never been on time for anything that wasn't his own entrance. I told her to send him up and turned my chair toward the door. I heard him before I saw him. Not his laugh this time. Just footsteps. Slower than I'd ever heard them. The elevator opened, and Terrence Holloway walked out into the 10th floor reception area of Holloway Capital and just stopped. I watched it happen through the glass wall of my office. Watched his eyes move across the space, the reception desk, the logo on the wall behind it in brushed steel, the artwork, a photograph of the Atlanta skyline at dawn that I'd commissioned from a photographer in Castleberry Hill because the light in that image reminded me of why I stayed in this city. The open floor of analysts and associates moving with the quiet efficiency of people who take their work seriously because the man who built the place takes his seriously. Natasha smiled at him from the front desk, said something I couldn't hear. He nodded slowly without really processing it. His mouth was slightly open, not in a dramatic way. In the way a man's mouth opens when the room he's standing in has just rewritten everything he thought he knew. There it is. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, walked out to meet him. Terrence looked at me. Really looked at me. Not the way he looked at me at Thanksgiving, not the way he'd looked at me for the last 20 years. This was different. This was a man seeing someone for the first time, and knowing it. Warren. He gestured vaguely at the space around him. How long have you? Come on back. I walked him past the open floor, past the conference rooms, past the wall where we display the businesses we've funded. 47 companies, 12,000 jobs created. He didn't say a word, just walked and looked and walked and looked, like a man moving through a museum of his own ignorance. I opened the boardroom door, gestured him in. He walked through, and then stopped so fast, I nearly stepped into him. Because sitting at the head of that long glass table, composed and elegant, a cup of tea in front of her, and a leather portfolio open beside it, was Simone. My Simone. The woman Terrence Holloway had pursued relentlessly 15 years ago, with the confident persistence of a man who had never been told no and didn't believe the word applied to him. The woman who had told him no. Clearly. Twice. The woman he'd then described to anyone who would listen as not that impressive anyway, because that's what men like Terrence do when rejection doesn't fit the story they've been telling themselves. She'd been my wife for 14 of those years, and she was sitting in my boardroom like she owned the building. Which, for the record, she partially does. Simone looked up from her portfolio, met Terrence's eyes, smiled the way she always smiles when something important is happening, warm and completely unruffled, like she'd been expecting him. Like this was just another Monday. Terrence. Her voice calm as still water. It's been a long time. The silence that followed was one of the most complete silences I have ever witnessed in my life. Terrence didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there in the doorway of my boardroom, looking at the woman he'd dismissed 15 years ago sitting beside the brother he'd dismissed 3 days ago, and every assumption he had ever made about either of us collapsed in real time like a building that had been condemned for years and finally gave up pretending it could stand. Terrence didn't move. I counted. 5 full seconds of a grown man standing in a doorway with his mouth open and nothing coming out. 5 seconds doesn't sound like much until you're standing in it. Then it feels like a year with bad weather. I pulled out the chair across from Simone and sat down. Nodded at the seat beside Terrence. Sit down. He sat, slowly. Like his legs had received the instruction, but his brain was still several steps behind, still standing in the lobby, staring at the logo on the wall. I opened the folder in front of me. The first photograph. Simone and me on our wedding day. Spring in Atlanta, 2012. Piedmont Park. Cherry blossoms doing that thing they do in April, where they fall so slowly, it looks like the sky is being gentle on purpose. Simone in ivory. Me in a navy suit she'd picked out because she told me, and I quote, that my left to my own devices, I would show up to my own wedding, looking like a substitute teacher at a mid-level accounting firm. She wasn't wrong. I slid it across the table. Terrence looked down at it. I could see the exact moment it registered because his jaw did something I'd never seen it do before. It tightened and loosened at the same time, like 2 different versions of him were fighting over which reaction to have. The second photograph. Zoe, 12 years old, standing on stage at the Atlanta Symphony Hall, cello between her knees, spotlight turning her dark hair almost gold. She has her mother's eyes, and my patience, and a talent that came from somewhere neither of us can explain. But both of us get quiet watching. The third photograph. Micah, 8 years old, sitting on our roof in Decatur with his telescope pointed at a sky full of things most adults have stopped looking at, grinning like a kid who just figured out a secret the universe has been keeping. I set the photographs in a row. Wedding. Zoe. Micah. Let them sit there like evidence on a table, because that's exactly what they were. 14 years. Terrence stared at those photos for a long time. I let him stare. Finally, he looked up. His voice had gone somewhere small, somewhere I hadn't heard it visit since we were kids sharing a room in Grandma Opal's house and the thunder got too loud. 14 years. He said it back to me, like he was testing whether the words were real. And you never said anything, not once, to anybody. Simone spoke before I could. We didn't feel the need to announce our life to people who weren't paying attention to it. Terrence looked at her, something moving behind his eyes that I'd never seen there before. Simone. How did you two? 2 months after you and I ended, she said it clean, no edge. The way a woman speaks when the wound closed so long ago she's forgotten which side it was on. We met at a fundraiser over on the west side. He spilled tea on my brief, apologized 4 times, bought me a new brief the next day, and had it delivered to my office with a note that said, "I promise I'm more coordinated than this in every other area of life." She glanced at me, those eyes doing that thing they've done to my chest for 14 years. I like that about him. He does what he says he's going to do. Terrence opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Like a man at a door he keeps trying to walk through, but the frame keeps moving. I want to walk you through something. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice quiet because I have never needed volume to make a point. Just so we're clear going forward. He nodded. November 2011. You got pulled over on Peachtree Industrial with a .17. You called me at 1 in the morning from a holding cell in DeKalb County. I paid the fine and the lawyer before the sun came up. You told Grandma you handled it yourself. His throat moved. 2014. You wanted the first lot lease for the dealership. The leasing company didn't approve you, Terrence. I guaranteed it. Called a contact at the firm I'd been holding a favor with for 2 years. You threw a party when it went through. Told everyone you'd finally gotten someone to believe in your vision. His eyes dropped to the table. 2019. Your biggest client was about to walk. I called him personally. A man named Jerome Whitfield. Sat with him for an hour at a restaurant in Buckhead. Asked him to give you another quarter. He did. I paused. You celebrated that one too. Posted it online. Said, "Persistence pays off." The room was so quiet, I could hear the air conditioning cycling. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, and I meant it. I'm telling you because you stood in Grandma Opal's dining room in front of our entire family and told them my life was empty, that I had no one to call, that I had nothing to show for 53 years on this earth. I sat back. And I needed you to sit in this room, in my building, across from my wife, and understand exactly who you were talking to on Thanksgiving night. Terrence Holloway, who always had something to say, who had never met a silence he didn't try to fill with the sound of his own voice, said absolutely nothing. First time in 45 years. Simone quietly closed her portfolio, stood up, smoothed her jacket, kissed me on the temple the way she does when she's proud of me, but doesn't need to say it out loud. I have a 10:30. She looked at Terrence one last time. Not unkindly, just completely. Like closing a book she'd already finished a long time ago. It was good to see you, Terrence. Take care of yourself. She walked out. Her heels on the hardwood made the only sound in that room for a long time. We both watched the door. Terrence stared at it after it closed like he was waiting for the last 15 years of his life to walk back in and rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. They wouldn't. And then that door opened again. And a voice I wasn't expecting filled the room with 2 words that stopped everything I thought I had under control. My boys. Grandma Opal was standing in the doorway. coat still on, purse on her arm, reading glasses hanging from the chain around her neck, the way they've hung since 1996. She looked at both of us the way only a woman who raised you from the ground up can look at you. Like she built you with her own hands and has every right to inspect the work. I hadn't planned this. Whatever I thought I had under control, whatever careful architecture I'd constructed for this morning, Grandma Opal standing in my boardroom was not part of it. Grandma. My voice came out surprised. First time in this whole story, I didn't have the next line ready. How did you? Natasha let me in 20 minutes ago. Sweet girl. Made me tea. She walked into the room like she owned it. Not fast, not slow. The pace of a woman who has never adjusted her speed for anyone and doesn't intend to start in a boardroom in Midtown Atlanta on a Monday morning. She set her purse on the table, looked around at the glass walls, the skyline, the photographs still sitting in their row. Wedding, Zoe, Micah. Her eyes rested on the pictures for a moment. Something soft moved across her face. Then it passed and the steel came back. Sit down, Grandma, please. I'll sit when I'm finished. She looked at Terrence first, then at me, then back at Terrence, taking her time, measuring something only she had the ruler for. You. She pointed at me. Not angry. Something past angry. Something that had aged past angry into something heavier and more honest. I have been waiting 14 years for you to stop hiding, baby. The word hit me in the chest. Hiding. She was right. I'd called it protecting. I'd called it privacy. I'd called it a dozen things that sounded better than the truth. The truth was that I had hidden. From my family. From the judgment I assumed was coming. From the possibility that they might take the life I'd built and reduce it to a conversation topic. Grandma saw through every single one of those reasons, the way she sees through everything. Directly. Completely. Without apology. She turned to Terrence, and her voice changed. Not louder. Lower. The way a voice drops when the person speaking has been carrying a sentence for a very long time and is finally setting it down. And I have been waiting 45 years for you to stop performing. Terrence's face crumbled, not dramatically, not the way faces crumble in movies. It just came apart quietly the way real things do. The jaw loosened. The eyes went wet. The shoulders dropped about 2 inches. Every piece of armor he'd spent his entire adult life building, the laugh, the grin, the dealership, the buckhead address, all of it just slid off him like a coat that never fit in the first place. You knew? His voice came out cracked. This whole time? Baby. I knew about Simone the first week. She said it plain. Like she was telling him what time dinner was. You think a grandmother doesn't know when her grandson's eyes change? Warren came to Sunday supper and he was different. Lighter. Like someone had opened a window in a room that had been closed too long. She paused. I met Zoe when she was 3 weeks old. I've been to every one of her recitals. That girl calls me Gigi, and she plays Dvorak like the Lord himself is sitting in the front row listening. And Micah. Something softened in her face. That boy showed me Jupiter through his telescope last summer, and explained the moons to me for 45 minutes, and I understood about half of it and loved every second. Terrence looked at me. His eyes were wet now in a way he wasn't trying to hide anymore. You all had this whole time. And I was. You were busy. Grandma said it without cruelty. Just fact. You were busy being loud. Busy making sure everyone saw you. And the whole time the people worth seeing were standing right next to you and you never once looked sideways. She straightened her coat. The gesture of a woman who has said what she came to say and doesn't believe in encores. Grandma. Terrence's voice broke completely. Like a levee that had been holding for years and just decided today was the day. I've been an idiot. My whole life. I've been a complete idiot. Yes, you have. No hesitation. No softening. Then, quieter. But you're my idiot. And it's not too late to be something else. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at Midtown below. Cars moving. People moving. The city doing what the city does. Going forward, whether you're ready or not. I'm going to connect you with David Chen, over at Peachtree Capital. He owes me a conversation. I'll make the call this afternoon. By end of week, you'll have a bridge loan to cover the lot payments and whatever Brenda's lawyer sends. I turned around. I'm also sending Derek, my operations manager, to spend 2 days with you. Your back end is a mess, Terrence. Has been for years. Derek will fix it. Terrence blinked. You'd still. You're my brother. Simple. Final. The way you say something that has never been conditional and never will be. Mama raised us to take care of each other. That doesn't expire. He stood up, looked around the room one more time. The view, the building, the quiet evidence of a life fully built. For what it's worth. His voice dropped, raw and honest in a way I'd never heard from him. I'm proud of you, man. I should have said that a long time ago. I let that land. Let it mean what it meant. Get home safe, Terrence. He walked to the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened and he stepped in, and for just a second, right before they closed, I saw him. Really saw him. Not the loud one. Not the flashy one. Not the favorite. Just my little brother. Looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, and more honest than he'd ever been. The doors closed. Grandma Opal was still standing by the table. She picked up her purse, walked over to me, and took both of my hands in hers. Held them the way she'd held them in her doorway on Thanksgiving night. But different now. Lighter. I'm proud of you, baby. Her eyes were bright. Always have been. Now take me downstairs and put me in a cab before the traffic gets foolish. I walked her to the lobby. She patted my hand once at the curb, got in the car, and rode away like a woman who had just finished Sunday service and had biscuits to get to. I stood on the sidewalk, midtown traffic moving around me, and breathed. I walked back inside. Took the stairs instead of the elevator because I wanted the quiet and the climb. 1 floor up to my private office. The one that doesn't show up on the company directory. The one Simone decorated 2 years ago because she walked in, looked around at the bare walls and the beige furniture and the single sad plant I'd been overwatering since 2019, and told me that my taste ran toward aggressively beige and mildly offensive, and that she was staging an intervention whether I liked it or not. She was right. She usually is. The room is different now. Warm wood shelves she found at a market in Inman Park. A photograph of Zoe and Micah on the beach at Tybee Island, both of them squinting into the sun, Micah holding a hermit crab like it was the most important discovery in the history of science. A small framed drawing Zoe made when she was 6. Just a house with smoke coming from the chimney, and 4 stick figures holding hands. She'd written us at the top in purple crayon. I've closed deals worth more money than most people will see in their lives in this office, and that drawing is still the most valuable thing in the room. I sat down in my chair. The leather creaked the way it always does. Familiar. Settled. Like a house that had finally stopped shifting on its foundation. My phone had a text from Simone already. How'd it go? I smiled. Typed back. It's done. 3 dots. Then, you okay? I looked out the window. The morning had started gray, that low, heavy Atlanta overcast that sits on the city like a lid. But sometime in the last hour, while I was standing in a boardroom watching my brother learn who I actually was, the sky had started to crack open. Pale winter light coming through in long, quiet seams over the midtown rooftops. Not dramatic, not sudden, just patient. The way light comes back when it's been waiting for the clouds to finish whatever they needed to do. I'm more than okay. I'm home. Tell Micah yes to the telescope. The sky's clear tonight. 3 dots. Then, he's already set it up on the back porch. That boy had the weather app open before breakfast. Also, Zoe wants you to know she finally nailed the 3rd movement of the Dvorak, and she will be performing it for you whether you want her to or not. I laughed. Actually laughed. Sitting alone in my office on the 10th floor of a building with my name on it, laughing at a text message about my daughter's cello threats. Tell her I want nothing more, and tell her I'm bringing her plate from Grandma's. The mac and cheese survived. You're a hero, Warren Holloway. Itre, jerk chicken tonight? Please. I set my phone face down on the desk, leaned back. Outside the window, Atlanta was doing what it does. Moving, building, growing in every direction at once, loud and messy and beautiful. A city that has never once apologized for being exactly what it is. I thought about Grandma Opal, about the way she'd kept my secret for 14 years without me ever asking her to. Not because she had to, because she understood something most people don't. That love doesn't always look like showing up and being loud about it. Sometimes love looks like standing outside a closed door and trusting the person on the other side to open it when they're ready. She gave me that. 14 years of grace. The kind of grace that doesn't announce itself, doesn't ask for credit, just holds steady in the background, like the foundation under a house that everyone walks on and nobody thinks to thank. I thought about Terrence, about the look on his face in that elevator, smaller than I'd ever seen him, but honest, maybe for the first time. And I thought about how sometimes the people who make the most noise are the ones who are the most afraid of silence. Because silence is where you meet yourself. And not everyone is ready for that introduction. I thought about Simone, about the way she'd walked out of that boardroom like a woman who had finished a chapter she started 15 years ago and didn't need to read it again. About the way she'd kissed my temple. About the heart she sends in text messages because one character has always been enough when the feeling behind it is whole. And I thought about God. The way Grandma Opal taught me to think about God. Not as thunder and lightning and big dramatic interventions, but as the quiet thing, the still, small voice, the patience that holds you together when you're not sure you can hold yourself. I felt that today. Not in the boardroom, not in the revelation, in the moments between, the breath on the sidewalk, the stairs instead of the elevator, the light coming through the clouds without being asked. That's where God lives if you're paying attention. In the spaces most people walk right past. Grandma Opal prayed at that Thanksgiving table for the grace to be gentle with each other. I think about that now. Grace. It costs you nothing to give and everything to withhold. My brother spent Thanksgiving evening telling a room full of people that my life was small, and I spent the Monday after showing him it wasn't. But the part that matters, the part I'll carry longer than any of it, is that when it was over, I didn't close the door. I left it open. Because that's what you do for family. Not because they earned it. Because you did. Zoe had her cello waiting. Micah had his telescope aimed at Jupiter. Simone had the jerk chicken started. And somewhere across this city, my brother was driving home in a car that felt different than the one he'd driven here. Not because the car had changed, but because the man inside it finally had. The sky over Atlanta was clear. Not a single cloud left. Just wide-open blue stretching out in every direction like the city had taken a deep breath and decided to start over. Some people spend their whole lives making noise just to feel significant. I spent mine quietly building something that mattered. And tonight the sky is clear. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you would have done in that boardroom. Would you have helped him? Would you have walked away? There's no wrong answer. Just honest ones. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. We tell real stories here. Raw ones. The kind that stay with you after the screen goes dark. I'll see you on the next one.